For the month of October, we're looking at 5 horror and Halloween classics to determine if they are required viewing. This week, we close out the Evil Dead trilogy with fan favorite Army of Darkness. Having been accidentally sent back to the Middle Ages, our chainsaw-handed hero Ash reluctantly finds himself trying to save a kingdom, and to extension, the world from a powerful army of deadites as he desperately tries to find a way home. So the legend of Ash Williams is born, the smart-ass idiot hero who's only good at 2 things, one-liners and kicking butt, equal parts badass and dumbass. You could say that you get the full ass. I can't help but immediately start off by citing that you sent me some interesting texts about a certain trippy experience you had while watching this film. I can ascertain from those texts, and based on your watching of the previous 2 films, once again, you hadn't seen any of the Evil Dead films with the exception of parts of the first film. I can ascertain that this is not exactly what you expected.
Not a little bit, no. Not at all. Did not meet expectation. No, was not able to predict what was happening there. Yeah, that was why do you give me drugs, Demos? Why?
Hey, if in the form of Bruce Campbell, I think you should be thanking me.
Okay, then. I don't have a response for that yet.
Exactly. So, I mean, good way, bad way, the guy with the digital copy way, talk to me.
Listen, I mean, there's a reason why I'm dressed like Nathan Fillion right now with my Captain Hammer t-shirt. Boom. Is that's the closest I could get to imitating a Bruce Campbell motif, right? I mean, I feel like Nathan Fillion and Bruce Campbell is like Sly Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, no.
Especially between Briscoe County and Firefly.
Hey, listen, you can't take the sky from me. Anyways, no. Listen, I'm really still kind of trying to work that out. Some of it was full-fledged awesome, but we know at this point, from where we're sitting, this thing went into full-fledged comedy. There was no horrific moments, no moments where I felt truly scared. It was anytime someone got hit, my brain went, pimp smack your ass, bitch, and did all the stuff with none of the, oh my gosh, this is physically unpleasant to watch. And as ridiculous as this is going to sound, kind of missed some of that. Gonna tell you that right now.
That kind of surprises me because you've on this show have said how much you're not a big fan of the horror genre. So you would think that the comedy episode would have been the one that you were really much more into. I mean, a lot of people, I guess in many ways, Army of Darkness clearly is far tamer than the first 2 films. It's more universally appealing, but it's lacking the edge that made the others horror classics, in my opinion. In fact, the only parts of this film that somewhat capture the horror tone of the first 2 are maybe the scenes of the pit, the castle possession, the windmill, which to a degree you could even argue it's the first true cabin in the woods. It's much more of a comedy with some horror elements a la Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I'll go with that, and I think, well, and here's the thing: you say that about Ghostbusters, and yet there's no way, in my opinion, that this even begins to capture that kind of a movie. It's just not it's not Ghostbusters. But then again, what is? This doesn't mean I'm taking a dump on the movie per se.
Well, they did eventually make one true horror film in the Ghostbusters franchise, and it came out in 2016.
I'm not touching that. Anyways, so yeah, no, I here's the thing. It was trying to be a comedy movie, but it did some other stuff. You could tell they were trying to be serious. Like, listen, give them this much credit, Demos. The undead army in this movie looked bleeding fantastic. Listen, you could tell this beast had a damn budget, and the skeletal army in this movie is fan-flippin-tastic, not to mention undead Ash, which went through what one can only describe as a unique birthing process, to say the least. And I think that was the one attempt at a horror element. Perhaps my correct answer here isn't to say that they didn't try, is more that they kind of failed. You said it best with it lost a lot of the edge. It was there to cause conflict and to make up a reason out of thin air to make Bruce Campbell's Ash Williams go places and talk trash. But that was about it.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
We spent quite a bit of time in the last review, Evil Dead Part 2, explaining how the first 10 minutes are really just a summation of that first film for people who hadn't seen it. Right. And it picks up once he gets possessed. In many ways, you could even argue that the ending is a full summation of the third film. So in many ways, Evil Dead 2 is a summation of the whole damn trilogy.
Yeah, that could be argued. What they set me up for in Evil Dead 2, I did not get in Evil Dead 3. Oh, sure. There were still knights and stuff, and they were still, people with swords, and it was still a medieval setting. Cool. But you did not give me that same tone.
No, the tone is completely different. But at the same time, though, one of the things I always argue against in many film sequels is that we get more of the same. We get the same jokes, the same lines, the same overall plot. The Evil Dead trilogy cannot be argued, despite the fact that the first two films are essentially it's another night in the cabin, but the tone and the approach is stylistically different. You go from horror to horror comedy to, in this third film, comedy.
Right.
The more badass version of Ash in this could be an escalation of that turn at the end of Evil Dead 2. It does in many ways feel like a different character, but I enjoy the hell out of it. It's endlessly quotable, and honestly, a lot of it is because of Bruce Campbell's delivery.
Well, I mean, listen, that's not to say the least. You listen, you came for the Bruce Campbell. You were hoping to get more moving forward with the movie, which, by the way, shop smart, shop S-smart. It's ridiculous, but fireball, I like it. And, now that we've done walk the walk here, where I'm forced to go is to start to tear this movie apart. I did not like a lot of what they tried here. It did not lando for me. First of all, the pit and the deadites are in the water, and I'm like, okay. Would have preferred to see them meet him in the open field like we were promised at the end of the second movie. But okay. And the whole thing with the elder throwing him, strange one. Okay, listen. There's plenty of fun in this movie to go around. Let's not be stupid, okay? Then after that, I got to tell you, pretty tough for me to give a damn. And you send him on the quest to find the book. Oh, look, he needs the fireball book again. Great. Fireball. That's what it boils down to, is it's a MacGuffin again, which is fine. That could be done and done well. But Ash becoming this stupid, like Ash was the one that had at least a little bit of sense. In the first Evil Dead, he wasn't, Scott, the D-bag, I got this character. But Ash saw some now he's stronger now, and he's supposed to be less of a douche.
He becomes Scott in this film.
Yes, exactly. Not very happy with that part of it. Scott was a douche. F that guy. That being said, he did have a lot more charm than Scott by design. He's the hero he's supposed to.
He's Bruce Campbell.
He's Bruce Mother Fireball Campbell. That's what's going on there. Okay. So Higgitus Figgitus and all that. But what I struggle with this movie. It was definitely felt like it was pieced together. It definitely felt like it was written for an excuse for Ash to get into certain situations. As funny as they kind of were in a lot of cases, it's not like it never lands. But for me, it was not as strong an entry. I think the funniest stuff was him in the S-Mart, because that move that they made with Ash's backstory really did make me laugh.
Yeah. Maybe I'm a Chinese jet pilot.
Overall, I think that you're saying that at least part of what you're saying is that the comedy not only diluted the horror, but also diluted the stakes.
Correct. And I mean, you mentioned they tried their damnedest to not do the same old jokes thing. That's fine, but You didn't give me. Instead, you have something as badass and cool as a mother flipping guy with a maggot farming chainsaw for a hand, and you downgrade me to like a mechanical gauntlet prosthetic. Lame.
That was a little disappointing, wasn't it?
That's a lot disappointing. Listen, a little disappointing is, oops, Legolas flipped up onto the horse the wrong way in the Lord of the Rings movie. So we left it in because we thought it was amazing. No, that was disappointing. This was effing dumb.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying when I say equal parts badass and equal parts dumbass, is that the film is a little inconsistent with his character. Like, I mean, obviously there is that redemption moment where he decides to be the leader. He decides to take control. And from that point on, for the rest of the film, he's much more in line with Evil Dead 2 Ash, in my opinion. Even getting down to the point where he has a dual sword fight scene, which I thought was a lot of fun. There's a lot in this movie, and I think that a lot of people might be taken aback by our take here, because I guess it's more universally appealing. It had the bigger budget. It was released by Universal Pictures. It wasn't as much of an underground film as the first two. So a lot of people were exposed to this film, even to the point where it was played heavily edited, of course, but it was played much, much more on TNT and cable stations and so forth. So I think a lot of people, if they've seen an Evil Dead film, it's probably this one. So there are a lot of diehard fans out there that just absolutely love this film. It's a guilty pleasure in many ways, and there are certainly moments in this film that I do cheer with, that I do laugh out loud with, it's a film I do end up watching every Halloween. But it's also the first one that I saw on TV. And then I saw Evil Dead 1, and I'm like, all right, let's see more of this guy. And he's kind of a coward in that first one. He's a dweeb, and I'm like, well, hail to the king, baby, where are you? Evil Dead 2, I thought, was the perfect balance of character. And it's one of the reasons that I call that film required. Were you expecting, having not really experienced these films as much, were you expecting the Ash that's more popularized, partly because of the quotes, "This is my boomstick," and so forth, were you expecting that Ash in the other films?
No, not in that particular way. I didn't expect him to be that brazen. When I saw Ash Williams in Evil Dead 1, it was dumbfounding, but I'm like, oh, you know what? That lines up. And I was okay with it by the end of the car ride into the cabin. I was, you know what? Bruce Campbell's doing some great acting because he's a pretty awesome dweeb here,
Give me some sugar, baby.
The steampunk car was effing brilliant. That's what and then what do we do? Oh, he crashed it. Lame. This was about as disappointing to me in some elements as A Knight's Tale was. You had a great concept here and you found a way to blow it.
I'll tell you, this film is, in my opinion, it's a lot better than Knight's Tale, but
I didn't say it wasn't. I said it had some aspects. Yes,
okay.
For those playing at home, let's not say I said this movie was as bad as Knight's Tale. That's not what happened here.
Before I get to the parts that I do really enjoy about this film, I did want to share some of the parts that didn't work for me. The windmill scene. Almost everything in that scene, it took the comedy way too far. When he gets to the point where he's grilling his face like a pancake, I'm sorry, man. That's just like, they took the self-abuse to a freaking breaking point.
I think it's the exact opposite.
No, really?
Well, hear me out. Like the self-abuse was great in the second movie, and like he's smashing himself over the head with the freaking plates was perfect. Right in the face.
What worked in that is the way that they set everything up was you didn't know if the punchline to all the setup was going to be a joke or a horrific turn. In this, everything was a joke.
Right. So, and what was a joke was the way that they attempted to deliver on this whole pancake thing. To be honest, I didn't come up with the pancake thing till you just said it. I just thought his face was stuck against. Oh, it's hot and his skin is skin, so it's sticking. What the get some Crisco, bitch. And I mean, the mini ashes. Okay, it's different. It was just dumb. Okay, this is what I feel like Star Wars fans see when they think about Disney taking over Star Wars, right? Okay? Like, this is okay. So this is you trying to do Evil Dead, and it sucks because you're not willing to go all the way with it. Now, say all that to say the whole, oh, hey, he swallowed one and birthed an evil Ash, so to speak. You know what? Okay, that was creative.
I'm okay with that.
What they did with Evil Ash, kind of dug it. The effect of when Evil Ash became essentially Undead Ash was pretty boss.
Mm-hmm.
But the little ashes were stupid as hell.
That's what, when I think of the windmill scene, I mean specifically the little ashes. It's a fun concept, but they took it too far. And if you watch the director's cut, they take it much farther. At one point, he has a bucket over his head and he's doing handstands. I mean, I invite the humor. I prefer comedy. It was one of the reasons I love Evil Dead 2 specifically so much is the comedy. But it went so far as, like, if he's a complete cartoon character, then I'm not invested. Or what's worse, and I'm okay if this was the first and only movie. Okay, that's what I'm in for. Right. But when you take that character that you've built up over 2 films and you turn him into a complete cartoon character, it almost does a disservice to the other 2 films. Having
watched Evil Dead 1 and 2. Expecting the unexpected is what you should have been groomed to watch by now. But while a lot of the stuff they did may have been unexpected, i.e. Little Ashes, this movie still looked like it was trying to be one part, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, having a badass who wasn't always a badass, be badass, and that movie did it better. This is a movie that was trying to do with undead soldiers and stuff like that. And there are other movies that have done it better. It's trying to be other movies. And I feel like other movies did it better. Which it's very strange that I put it that way, because there's not a whole lot of movies where they try to do miniature versions of the character or have an undead version of the character fight himself. This is the movie I wish I had taken notes like you did, because then what I could have done is pointed out, this was the inspiration for this. This was the inspiration for this, et cetera, et cetera. And really, when your whole shtick is to be unique, and you're starting to borrow that heavily, you're going to miss something. And that's exactly what they did here.
I agree with you on many of those points, but I do want to veer into some of the things I do enjoy. And I definitely understand why this movie is as revered by many as it is. Bruce Campbell knocks out of the park. However you feel about the character as opposed to the earlier films, regardless, he puts on a tremendous display in this film, not only playing good Ash and bad Ash, but he puts on a terrific physical performance. He's fun to watch. He almost has in some scenes, he almost has a Kirk Douglas kind of vibe that I was really digging.
He has this Jim Carrey vibe, which is working too.
Yeah, so if Kirk Douglas and Jim Carrey had a man-child, it would be Ash Williams in this film. There's a lot of fun in this film. Some of the jokes are just a hell of a lot of fun, and I personally love it when the cinematography aids a joke. One of the first scenes in the film that I just, the moment I watched it for the first time and I saw this scene, I knew immediately that I was going to dig it. And it's the scene where all the heads start turning and the camera follows all the heads in the crowd turning until they reach Bruce Campbell, and then he turns and faces a sword. The cinematography aids in the punchlines.
I feel like the way this movie was made, the cinematography, if you will, was definitely the superior of the 3 movies. Listen, the Deadites looked really good.
Makeup-wise, makeup, it's the best. Easy.
Correct. But they lost some of the creepiness factor.
Definitely.
The Undead Army was fan-bleeding-tastic. For the budget they had at the time that this was made, I bought it. I bought a lot of it. I've been already over how much I like the look of Evil Ash, and as dumb as the tiny ashes were, they looked real good. I felt like that It's not because they were made poorly.
The biggest difference between this and the director's cut, I mean, I can do a whole video just on the making of this film, but essentially speaking, the studio took control for the final cut. Eventually, Sam Raimi, after the film became a big cult hit and so forth, he released his intended version, which features a few deleted scenes, a lot of alternate takes, a lot of alternate lines, specifically, most famously, when he shoots evil Ash in the face.
Good. Bad. I'm the guy with the gun. I ain't that good.
Theatrical cut wins. As far as lines are concerned, 100%, in my opinion, the theatrical cut wins. The ending is... The alternate ending is the biggest point of contention among fans over which version is better. The S-Smart ending that we get in the theatrical version, or the alternate ending that we get in the director's cut. Now, Kyle, you haven't seen that alternate ending yet, so we're going to play that for you right now, and I want to get your immediate reaction.
Bring it. So all I see there with that ending, Demos, is another effort where Evil Dead would be trying to do another movie, but doing it inferior to the way that other movie did it. It's just a bad version of "You blew it up! Damn you! Damn you to hell!" And really, all you actually blew up was this fireball movie with that. No, I'm another point for the theatrical on this one, folks.
The theatrical ending is much more in line, I think, with the tone of the film. Following the overall comedic efforts of Army of Darkness, that ending is way too cruel to end on. If it ended on Evil Dead 2, if it took a similar type of turn, and it kind of does, it makes sense. Over here, that's an FU. It speaks much more to the buffoonery of the character, like a final FU, a final Klaatu Vrata Nick.
Yeah, it definitely throws a fireball in the face of what's going on. And listen, man, I'll say this: what I did like about the ending, instead of him shouting "No!" this time, like, he's just laughing a lot, deliriously, like that insane kind of shiz. Perfect reaction at this point. That much credit I will give it, but no, I mean, like, Ash Van Winkle does not do it.
I do want to point out that I love that line. I still get a kick out of it every single time I watch that version. Is manufactured products.
Yes, no, that's legit.
But the end, come on, hail to the king, baby. I love that ending. It's the only one that makes you. It's the only ending in the whole series that makes you feel like good at the end. It's such a kick-ass ending. I mean, it's silly. It is very silly, but it's fun.
I slept too long, or hail to the king, baby. What else do I have to tell you?
Hail to the king, baby.
I feel like people are gonna get the wrong impression that we hated this film, and I don't think that. I actually really enjoy this film, but I can acknowledge that there are some parts that are really fantastic in it and some parts that just don't work. It in many ways, it is a mixed bag. Yeah. But I definitely 100% understand why people love this film, because it is a fun ride.
Well, here's my attitude to it personally. Like, you mentioned in our Evil Dead 2 breakdown that a lot of people think different parts of this trilogy are the best part of the trilogy, right? Most people arguably probably would say Evil Dead, but there's some that say 1, there's some that say 2. Apparently, I've come to find out I'm a member of the 2 tribe, right? So my response to that would be, hey, you are harsh on this movie. Well, yeah, it's because Evil Dead 2 came before it and did a better job. That's not this movie's fault. It's just what we're stuck comparing it to, you know?
So let's get to the big question. Is Army of Darkness required viewing?
Well, here's the thing. I almost wanted to throw It Belongs in a Museum on it, but I couldn't do enough gymnastics to slide it into that category, right? I'm forced to call it recommended because, to be honest, if you don't see it, you're always going to be left wondering, what in the high hell were they smoking at the end of Evil Dead 2?
Well, at the very least, it has a lot of iconic scenes that you could say that it's recommended for because of that, wouldn't you say?
Right, exactly. It's they did Groovy before. The downgrade to the Gauntlet doesn't do anyone any good, but this is my boomstick. Listen, I played enough Warcraft 3 to where I first heard that. I'm like, I don't know what that's from the Dwarven Rifleman, but damn it, it's awesome. I'm like, when he shouted out boomstick, I'm like, oh, okay,
This is my boomstick.
While I'm watching the windmill scene, it was flirting with Pass. But then the ending and the skeleton army and of course more of the quibs and comments rescued it into the realm of recommended.
This is the way that I would probably describe Army of Darkness if someone would ask me. I would say that, yes, it's a fun ride in a whole lot of ways. But I think that it's as if Sam Raimi took the word groovy from the second film and expanded the tone it suggests into an entire film.
Okay.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it falls flat, but it remains above all, for lack of a better word, groovy. It all comes around.
It's not required. It's groovy. Maybe that should be another category. I don't know.
Another category that all sums up to recommended. Army of Darkness is definitely more approachable by a general public than the original two films. I can see why it's built the reputation it has, why a lot more people have seen it, and why more people tend to enjoy it in comparison to the first two films. And I'm all for that. It's, like I said, a film that I enjoy very much, a film that I've watched countless times. I wouldn't necessarily call it required. Evil Dead 2 is possibly the best film in this series. Part 1 is probably the best constructed horror film, flat, of the series, and one of the best of all time in the genre. This film, groovy fun, but hey, let's just say this. If you've watched the first two, you have to watch it. And I still maintain that it should have been called Medieval Dead.
Oh, yeah, no, that's 100% correct.
Love it or hate it, we're the guys with the review channel. So let us know.
We'll take our lumps, Demos.
I honestly, I want to engage in this film. So let us know in the comments below why you feel this film is required. And if you don't, why not? Which is your favorite film in this franchise? And what other horror comedies would you recommend? We're definitely looking for more to cover for next year, so I don't completely castrate my co-host with apprehension for the horrific. So we want
Castration, really? Does Beetlejuice count as a comedy horror?
Beetlejuice in many ways reminds me a lot in tone with this film. In fact, there are many aspects of Army of Darkness that kind of remind me of a Tim Burton film. From certain shots, there's that kind of gothic stop motion atmosphere in this, and which I really dig. This has more in common with Beetlejuice, a comedy with some horror elements. Even more so with Beetlejuice than I'd even say Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, okay.
But honestly, for me, and it's not because of the gore effects or anything on that, but just purely on a sense of horror scenes. And of the films that we've covered this month already, I'd even wager to say there are some scenes in Return to Oz that are scarier to me than some of the scenes in Army of Darkness. And I'll say this, and this is the way I can speak to it, is because I saw both of these films about the same time when I was a kid. And Return to Oz had some scenes that affected me more than Army of Darkness because I was having so much fun with Army of Darkness that I wasn't taking the scares seriously.
The electroshock therapy on Dorothy was far scarier than anything that happened in Evil Dead, or excuse me, in Army of Darkness, bitches. I'm just sorry, mid-Evil Dead.
I know that sounds like sacrilege to people that are listening, but it's not a fault of the film because, like I said, it's going for comedy. And when it's going for comedy, a lot of the times it works. It still falls flat, and that I can fault.
That you can fault. If it was a movie out on its own outside of the Evil Dead series, one could argue that you could default it.
I'm not gonna be mad at Army of Darkness because it's not scary.
No,
because it's not. Even though it's following on the heels of two of the most horrific films ever made,
it lacks edge.
Yeah,
you already said it best.
By design. Design.
I guess is what we're saying.
So let us know in the comments below, and make sure to stay tuned. We're taking a dip back into the pool of Disney horror, and yes, I still think that's an oxymoron, but just roll with this.
Hey, the little ash has definitely proved your point.
You could even argue that they prove that there is a small world after all, but we're dipping.
God damn it, Timo.
We're dipping our toes back into the realm of Disney horror with Something Wicked This Way Comes, based on the Ray Bradbury novel.
Which is ironically far less scary than dipping your toes into the It's a Small World ride's water. But that's a whole other conversation.
Oh yeah, that could require a tetanus shot. And I've seen all the coins they drop in there. I'm sure that copper has affected this water by now.
Oh Jesus.